Okay, guys. So here we are. You guys see what I see here? A big blue screen reading food labels. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
Nice. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit here today. We were already discussing a little bit. We all seem to have some interest in food and what we put in ourselves here. So we're going to go over that a little bit. Welcome, Patty.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here because I have mentioned in this group before that, I struggled with compulsive overeating and food addiction many, many years ago because I understood food from an emotional place rather than a nutritional place. So being here tonight is really good for me because I'm always learning about how I can eat healthy rather than eat emotionally. So thanks for this topic.
I love that. That's great. And such self-awareness with it too. It's something that I think other people should strive for. And Chris, welcome again, good sir.
David, thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're going to go over a little bit about what it takes to read food labels and a little bit of extra in there. I was telling Patty, we moved this date a little bit. So I've added some extra goodies in there, stuff for just awareness in general that I feel is helpful. So reading food labels, let's dive right into it. If I know how to do that, yeah, we do. So as again, I always do this where I'll give you guys a little bit of reference of where I get ideas. This is part of it, but I did a lot of stuff online, a lot of course material too. So I just threw in some of my favorites. Quotes here, it always seems easier to start tomorrow than today. Precision Nutrition in the back there, that white book. Phenomenal. John Berardi, great. If you're ever looking to be like, I really want to dig into nutrition, know nutrition, I want to teach nutrition, they're a really good company to get you started, and you don't need to do, 12 years of university or anything like that. And probably my all-time favorite just food book, honestly, 150 Healthiest Foods on Earth. Steve, welcome. Don't want to throw you out there, buddy. Welcome to the group. We just started. Good timing, man. It's like you missed the previews, right? Those movies you don't care about, and now we're into it, right into the meat and potatoes, right? But that's funny enough. We're talking food, we're talking the 150 Healthiest Foods on Earth, one of the best books ever, honestly, because it's got a color book kind of a feel to it. You see the picture, gives you great ideas of what's in it, why you should eat it, some references of how it can fight cancer or be good for diabetes or what it might be. Great, great, great book. And nutrient timing there, I threw that in there. So I'm old. I had that when I was a teenager, and I think I threw that in there just because I found it. Like, oh my god, this book! It's probably outdated as hell, but all right, moving along here. That's kind of where we got some ideas. So what are food labels? That's a good question before we talk about how to use them. So this, funny enough, I'm like, man, I can't quite put a definition to it. I don't like the definitions I'm seeing. Well, Chat GPT, thank you for a definition here. A food label is a printed information panel or tag attached to packaged food products that provide important details about food's nutritional content, ingredients, serving size, and other relevant information. That's definitely a robot, right? No love in that. But at the same time, right to the point, right? As you can see next to it here, there's that chart everybody sees when you pick up your food, that big white nutrition chart. And that's kind of what we're going to look at. But why read food labels, right? What is the point, right? Well, it can help you avoid foods that have additives. There's certain foods that you may not want, as well as additives in foods you may not want. So reading that quickly, be like, oh, wow, I didn't know there was titanium dioxide in my Reese's Pieces. I'm not sure I really feel like titanium dioxide today to go with my peanut butter. I'll choose something else. And determine the quality. Sometimes that's great. You're like, oh, this is, oh, wow, this was this manufacturer and made in China in 1992. Like, I don't think I want to eat this anymore. That could be a good idea. You can compare it with other products, right? I love doing that. You grab a couple of each. I'm like, this one's way less sugar. Like, why would I buy this? And they use a better version of sugar. Like, so being able to compare becomes really helpful when you're in the grocery store. And then make more informed choices. You're going to start, if you start this process of like, okay, what is this white thing on the back of every food I eat? And you start to understand it, then you can play this game, this new game you never knew you could play, where you're constantly comparing and understanding, be like, okay, I guess I'll throw a little bit more protein. I do need some fat. I didn't have a lot today. Or that is way too many things I can't pronounce. I'm not eating that. Those are all good things you can learn from food labels. Well, that's why I like to read. Any questions there? Do you guys read food labels? That's a good question. Yeah?
No,
No, not so much. Steve?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Okay, so this is great. We got a little bit of each. We got Patty, we got a microscope, and then we got Chris, not so much, and we've got Steve kind of in between. This is perfect. I'm obviously geek. Like, I'm looking at almost everything. It's like before I even read the label of the food, I'm looking at the label for what's in it. But here we go. So who makes these labels? Well, for us, it's the nutrition division of the federal government. So not exactly a nutritionist, maybe, like possibly, but it's sort of a government influence. It's always important to kind of remember that, right? And now this is the most complicated screen out of everything. I promise it won't explode your mind, but this is what we always see, this nutrition chart in the middle. In the top left there, we'll go through the numbers first. We got our serving information. So, you know, maybe you have a cup of food and it tells you in grams here. That's important because sometimes they'll give you different units of measurement. Like, wait a minute, this is milliliters, and then they tell me this many grams, and then you're confused. Wait a minute, how much did I just freaking eat? So another thing to look at. Calories here, everyone tends to always talk about calories. That can be important, especially if you're looking to reduce them. You can see a simple number there, just tells you how many is in it, but per serving, right? So something to think about, 4 servings per container. If you've eaten the whole container, you're like, sweet, I had 280 calories. Well, we got to do some math, and we're going to do that later. But on the next one here, calorie is a traditional unit of heat. People don't know that. It's a part of an international system. It's defined as the amount of heat that's needed to absorb 1 gram of water to raise its temperature by 1 degree. It's not really that important. It's just a unit of measure is what I was trying to get a point at. It's not really any kind of unit of health. It's just a unit of measure. So number 3 there, we see nutrients. And this is kind of where I'm definitely spending my time with my eyeballs. I'm looking at, okay, this is how much fat, there's saturated fat. Trans fat's important. We'll talk about that. Cholesterol, sodium, those kinds of things. Carbohydrates, I definitely look at, and if there's a lot of added sugar. And then protein, for sure. Like, I like to work out. I like to build muscle. I want to make sure getting enough protein in my diet. So you can look at it. And now these days, I'm even more importantly looking that bottom list: vitamin D, calcium, iron, potassium. And that's only a few that's in there. A lot of them you look at magnesium and thiamine and all kinds of those things that we do actually want to get in balance. And then on number 4 there, this is a quick guide or the values. And we're going to get a little bit into the values later because that's probably a little more complicated and not always accurate. Like we said, it's a government regulated and changes all the time. So we'll get to that. But right underneath that, with these nice fat, alcohol, protein, starch, sugar numbers you see here, that's probably where most people have no idea. So when we looked at 1 gram of fat, so you have a little bit of butter and you've got yourself 1 gram of fat, that's actually equal to 9 calories, right? So the more fat you eat, the higher calorie dense it's going to be. Alcohol, interestingly enough, just underneath that at 7. And empty calories. Unfortunately, no nutrient value whatsoever in alcohol, and very high on the scale for how many calories you get from it. So, I mean, if you are going to have it, I like recommending things like red wine. Hey, get some red berries in there that have been fermented and give you some nutrients, right? Protein, 4 carbs or 4 calories per gram, right? Starch, same idea. And sugar, same idea. And what you don't notice on there is that fiber doesn't say anything. And a lot of times you'll see, oh, wow, there's 20 grams of carbs in this. Maybe I shouldn't eat it. But it actually says at the bottom, maybe 18 grams of fiber. And fiber is not the same. We're not going to absorb it. It's not going to give us energy. It's a little different. But this number system here is very important. If you're looking at it, like, okay, it says here, we're going to bottom left. We have an example. I forgot I did this. Sorry, guys, it's 2 weeks later, right? So the example, bottom left here, I took the actual chart. That's right. So we have 9 grams of fat, you can see here. And that equals 9 grams times 9 calories, because we said with fat, it's 9, right? So now all of a sudden we have 81 calories from just fat in this meal. And then we look at, okay, it says 34 grams of carbs. So I know that over here, 4 calories per gram. So I'm going to do 34 times 4, 136. I do the same for protein, 15 grams times 4, 60. And then I add it up. And you see I'm kind of close, 277 calories. I think they rounded up here, right? They said 280. Top right, but we did the math. We know those 3 calories, it's going to kill me, right? But I guess they do that, right? They just sort of push some numbers. But this can get easier the more you look at it. You start to see calories per gram. You know, fat is higher in density. You want to look out for extra sugars. So this is typically the one you want to look at first to understand, hey, is this a really high sugar food? Is this a really high fat food? Is this got some fiber in it? Is that good for me? And we can talk about that as well.
So
Please.
Fat has twice as many calories to it than a carb does.
Yes, absolutely.
Nearly.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Good observation there, Patty. Yeah, and that's a big thing.
That is huge.
Absolutely. And it's something to think about because people think, okay, well, you know, and it's popular these days to be like, oh, higher fats and I'll cut out my carbs. And so people are eating handfuls and handfuls of pistachios and cashews, and I'm not losing weight. Well, you know, you might have brought your blood sugar down by not eating as many carbohydrates, but you've thrown the calories through the roof by doubling down on way too much fat, right? And that can be a very common.
Crazy.
That must be what my problem is with dry roasted peanuts.
Ooh, yeah, high fat food for sure. Yeah.
Is that I like feel my hands
Yeah.
and put it in my face.
Yeah. You know, honestly, healthier choices, I say most of the time when you're getting things from nuts, seeds, and berries, and in the, you know, you're getting nutrients from your food, which is nice. But yeah, if you're looking at things from a calorie perspective, and that's something that you do handfuls of, and you tend to find other areas are a little cleaner, that's something to look at. I just started dealing with a client, same thing. It was Cashew City in the evening. Cashews. They're good for you, right? Like, yeah, but you just ate 3,000 calories in cashews, right? And that's going to add up for sure, right? So,
Well, now,
yeah.
I think the good thing about that, though, can be obviously moderation and stuff, right? But
Yep.
for me, you know, like most of the time, and I try to get not like honey roasted that has extra sugar and that kind of thing, but either dry roasted or
Yep.
sea salt kind of thing.
Good.
But looking at them, and I think, and I don't have it, it's over here, but it's something like 36 pieces might be, you know, a serving, right? So when I kind
Sure.
of dump that in my hand and I look at that, I'm like, okay, so I'm pretty close to one serving.
Yep.
And if I eat that and walk away, it does a pretty dang good job of
Yeah.
curbing my hunger versus potato chips,
Yeah.
Oreos, other crap like that. You
Good
know what
for
I mean?
you.
So it is kind of that trade-off. Certainly grabbing the whole jar and just chowing down, watching TV is not good, right? I mean, we all know that, but that does for me compared to other things that I could do. You know, like a banana is very dense. So I eat a banana, I feel pretty good. You know, I'm
Yep.
kind of full. But if I go eat like 2 apricots or a peach, I'm
Yep.
not necessarily full.
Sure.
And so there is kind of that trade-off as well, right? Where you're, you know, kind of trying to get full so you don't keep eating.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you're getting both the nutrients, the density,
Yeah.
the curbing your hunger, which is our huge problem down in the States, right? Is that
Yes.
we just eat like animals, and so we don't stop.
Well, satiety is tough for people to achieve sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And I like what you said there. Fats. I did the keto diet twice over the pandemic. There, just played with it and figured out and got the blood test to test everything. And I found that fats are a great way to sort of curb that craving, as you mentioned.
Right.
So you're getting peanuts and stuff like that, or you can try other nuts as well, or seeds, higher fat foods. But they're also going to be loaded with, you know, your typical coppers and zincs and seleniums and that kind of stuff come in our nuts. Whereas like, yeah, straight up potato chips, probably vegetable oil and crappy potatoes with like table salt. And so you're going to, if anything, lose nutrients eating something like that versus gaining some. And I like what you're mentioning there, because it sounds to me like you're actually more in tune to your blood sugar than you're aware, where you'll notice, hey, I had this apricot and this other fruit and I'm feeling more. And a lot of times if it's a higher sugar food, it's going to bump your sugar up and then you'll be craving it slowly, right? But with higher fat, you get that sort of satiated. You have a handful of or like boiled eggs or something like that, you're gonna be pretty full, right?
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the scary part here, we're looking back at this chart. We've got 4 calories per gram of sugar, and it is so easy to eat 100 grams of sugar. Whereas if you ate 100 grams of fat, you would fall over, right? Because it's so dense. So it's the nice thing about the fat a little bit is it'll tell you quickly that you're full. Whereas sugar, I think you could go for 200, 300, 400 and not be aware, right? So that's how the calories can get through the roof with sugar, because we can eat it times 10. At least fat fills us up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, this is really good. I liked how Patty made that note there. Definitely 9 grams. It's a lot higher. So being aware of fat still can be an issue. And sugar and starch obviously play different roles on our blood sugar, but are still the same amount in terms of calories. So, but yeah, like I said, most complicated chart, but definitely one of the best ones to look at and try to recalibrate and understand and be like, okay, these are things I'm looking at. And I wanted to sort of break it down so it doesn't seem like some sort of Egyptian Sanskrit anymore. You can kind of understand it, right?
No, now it's Latin.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're almost there, right? At least it's like getting on stages. You can learn.
I do speak Italian, so I am getting close.
Hey, wow, yeah, nice, man, nice. Even more important sometimes than that chart for nutritional value is the ingredients itself. I'll jump to that right away, because sometimes I'll know, hey, this is a high fat food. I don't even need to look at it first. I'm going to look at what's in it. What did they add to my food? And you can see behind there, they're wrapping in rich wheat flour, and you can see dioxides and syrups and corn maltocalcium phosphates. And they add a lot of stuff sometimes wait a minute, this is supposed to be a wheat cracker. Why is there pesticides, gericides, folic acid? Like, there's so many added things. Like, are these good for me? So my strategies I love teaching people is the 5-ingredient rule. You don't have to glue to this, but if you can, you find an ice cream that's close to 5 ingredients, and you find your favorite protein bar that's more along the line of 5 ingredients. Simple rule. But if all of a sudden you're like at 30, 40, 50 ingredients, you've lost count. You're like, why do I have to have this much stuff in a chocolate pudding? I don't understand why there needs to be so many things. Shouldn't be, right? It just should be like some milk and some sugar, So that's a simple rule. Can you pronounce it? That's a great simple rule for people. Phenylphenolphthaleocellulolecithol phosphate number 7. I got number 7 right, at least, right? And so if you can't quite pronounce it, I do like at the bottom there, I mentioned probably the best strategy is to Google it. If you're really not sure and you're worried, go ahead and Google it. It's the simplest thing you can do these days. I wish I had that when I was starting out doing this. Colors or numbers, I said there, number whatever, a red dye number 7. Those are things that aren't really foods. So you're normally aware that if they throw that in there, they're not really looking at organic foods to start with typically, right? They're already picking crap foods, and now they're adding crap things that are not food. So something to think about if you're looking for quality. Refined oils, that's a whole conversation on its own there, but people, Patty, I can see the hands up. People know when you do the research, vegetable oils, canola oils, palm kernel oils, all those things, they process so much that they're horrible on our system. They're horrible on our blood sugars. They're horrible on a lot of levels. So watching out for those is definitely something I look for. I'll look at it right away, like, ooh, does this have modified canola oil? And I'll put it away because I'm like, damn it, man. Like, use a good oil, will you? But something to look for. Modified foods. You see that a lot in modified food starch or modified glucose syrups or modified enriched wheat starch. And the more they modify it, the less it is food, the harder it is on our system, typically. Right?
So I got a quick question
Please.
without trying to kind of derail it or get into a big conversation.
I love it, man. This is why we're here. Small group tonight. Just chat it up. What's up?
Colors and numbers, like what? Obviously, a dye. If you're trying to make something like M&Ms or a bag of Skittles or something right, they're using a dye to give you different colors because it's pleasing to your eye and all that kind of thing, right? But if you're talking about colors in something that isn't necessarily manifesting that color, right, then what's the purpose of coloring or those kinds of things? Because I remember when I was a kid that they took red number 5 or whatever it was out of peanut M&Ms, right? Out of M&Ms because, it's going to cause you cancer, right? And then it came out that you would have to eat a dump truck load every day for 30 years to give yourself cancer. So it was a complete overreaction type thing. But I mean, when it makes sense to me where it's all marketing ploy for candy. Yes. Because you want little kids to be like, ooh, bright, shiny things, right?
Looks good.
But if it's something where like maybe, and I don't know if it isn't, but like crackers or this or that, and you might see colors, what is the purpose of that? I get some things like gluten that is made to keep it together so it doesn't crumble, right? And so that's why they put it in there, because it holds, I forget the word, emulsifier or something, but it holds it together so it doesn't break apart. But other than from a marketing ploy, what's the benefit or the purpose behind colors?
Yeah, most of it, you nailed it there. Like if you're finding quality food, you won't see those things in there just because they know they're not great for you and there's no need for them. They want the food to look as pretty as possible. Like you said, they want it to look glamorous. And think about this too, the more non-food you put in it, the less real food you have to put in it, the cheaper it is to make.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So, and then it's unfortunate, but like you can imagine that the food industry is a little greedy. right? And so that tends to happen to a deeper level. And you know, it's fine. You make decisions to have things like that all the time. But it's funny you mentioned red dye number 5. I was at a seminar with Dr. Mark Schauss, who's a famous nutritionist in the States there, and he discovered all kinds of allergy testing for foods and how much that affects bodies. I did some of these tests myself, great stuff. But it started with his mission with his daughter at a very young age, constantly having seizures. They said,
Oh,
listen,
wow.
she's so anaphylactic that she probably won't survive to teenagehood. And so he went on this mission to find out what the hell's going on, got her blood tested, started to find out that she was allergic to things, like really allergic to things, and happened to be red dye number 5. She would always pick the red gummy bears, or it was always eating the red dye number 5. It was like addicted to it.
Wow.
And they removed that stuff. And they followed a more strict diet of following her blood every few months and making sure she didn't eat those triggers. It was like 1 to 2 seizures, and she's now like 18. And so they figured it out, and they realized that these were massive triggers for her genes, her genetics, what was going on with her body, obviously specific. But to show you there, red dye number 5, yeah, you need to eat a truckload, but for some people, it's causing them seizures.
Right. You don't need to eat very much at all.
No,
And I
it's
think part of that
not-
too
yeah.
is part of the difficulty is you may be that 1 in 10,000 person or whatever, but to my knowledge, there's not a healthcare planet or healthcare system on the planet that would help you identify that, right? Like
Yeah.
they're so separated, food and nutrition or health,
Absolutely.
that your doctor wouldn't find that. They're not going to run expensive blood panels on their own.
Nope.
They're not going to do those kinds of things. And so whatever that one thing is, like my wife got diagnosed with Hashimoto's
Sure, thyroid. Okay.
about 5 years ago. And so she tries to avoid gluten, but when she eats it or she can't avoid it, which it's in everything and that, you know, whatever, but it'll cause inflammation, pain, you know, joint, like all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
And so,
I
but,
mean,
and it's even to the point where Red Vine's licorice has gluten in it, you know, you're like, what the hell, man?
Yeah, you got to read the label, right? See how
And
they
so,
wrapped it in
yeah,
red up
so
here?
it gets to this point that
Flour, right?
that's one of the big reasons, you know, we read labels,
Good.
is you know, because of her trying to help her avoid stuff or whatever. But I mean, there's no telling how any of us on this call might be eating stuff that we're allergic to or is causing inflammation or other issues. And our doctor's not going to necessarily help us do that if we don't kind of experiment and just run the petri dish ourselves.
Some self-learning here, right? Go ahead, Patty.
2 things. Number 1, red vines rule. I just
Yes, they do. They're so much better than Twizzlers. Twizzlers
so
suck.
much better than Twizzlers, hands down.
I
And
like
if I
OG
decide
licorice. I like licorice.
that I'm going to have red licorice, it's going to be red vines, and I'm very strategic about eating them because of the gluten that's in them, the red dye that's in them, and I know I'm only going to eat a few of them, but I crash after I eat them every time because they're just horrible. So it's a rare treat that I have them, but when I do,
kind of the thing,
appreciate
you know,
it.
when you know, now you can make informed decisions.
That's
right?
it. So I'm
And,
making informed decisions.
And you know, if you're getting seizures, that's a quick and easy lesson. You don't do it anymore, right? But it's something that, you know, without her father, she never would have figured that out, and she could have not made it to who she is today, right? And so that's one of those things, like how powerful this non-food is versus the human body. And something I used to use with my wife here, when she'd be like, "Well, should I eat some of this? I'm just having a little bit." I'm like, "Okay, so gasoline. We know we shouldn't drink it. Yeah, okay, but what if we just drank a little bit of gasoline every day? Is that okay?"
Same.
Right? And it's the same idea. You're kind of committing to that potential, not good for me.
Such a good point.
Right?
And now I'm going to have to revisit red vines now in my life because of that. Because of that point.
You know what? We're
make
gonna
such
get
a good
to
point.
it. We'll talk licorice in a few slides here. Okay, so Google suspicious foods for sure. One more, please.
The other thing, the number 2 thing I wanted to mention here is the number of ingredients that you mentioned, which I love this rule. You know, if it's got 5 or less in it, it's probably pretty healthy for you. I always say if it doesn't have a food label on it, it's good for you. You know, because it's a whole food. So there's nothing added to it. But I was looking at Greek yogurt. non-fat Greek yogurt and whole fat Greek yogurt, right? And when I looked at the non-fat, I was like, this seems like a healthier choice. But when I started looking at the ingredients, I'm like, man, this is horrible.
Yeah.
So it really, at some point, even getting down to, what would be seemingly a healthy product, now all of a sudden you make it fat free and you add all these other things to it. It's almost better to have the whole fat product, and if you're gonna have it, and then take a look at the quantity that you're eating of it. Anyway, that was just a point.
I love that. It's very, very true. I was 18, I think, trying to bulk up muscles and drinking a lot of milk, and like, you know what, I think I'm gonna cut back on all this 2%. I'm gonna go skim milk, maybe cut down a little bit. Well, didn't I get fatter? I got fatter from drinking tons of skim milk. Why? Because skim milk has nothing but milk sugar in it. And whole milk has more fat, way less sugar. So I started drinking homo milk then. I was getting way better gains drinking 3% milk. Mind you, I don't touch it much anymore. I don't eat much of anything I do when I was 18 anymore. But that was my first learning lesson of like, wow, skim milk says, don't drink that. It's straight up sugar. Right. And people tell you, hey, this is a fat loss I'm going to have. No, fat is good for us. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I like that point there, Patty. Definitely something that I'm sure other people have noticed, but I'm really glad that you saw, hey, this yogurt, it seems like a good idea, but I just read these ingredients like we're talking about here, and you put it down. Now you've made a better decision. Right. So that's what this whole was about, was making people look at things and be like, hey, maybe I can get something better for me and still be happy. Right. So details to look out for, right? So, and this is funny because you wouldn't see this for broccoli, like she was saying, but normally, yeah, when you buy something like broccoli, shouldn't have a nutritional label. It's broccoli, right? But other things we will. And so number one there, I put, are your carbs from sugar, starch, or fiber? So when you're looking at the carbohydrates, you probably want to opt for less sugar. And if you're seeing a ton of starch, you'd be aware of that, but the more fiber, the better. Right? Because fiber is the one that's not going to kill our blood sugar. Fiber is the one that's going to help feed our healthy gut bacteria. It's going to give us not a blood sugar crash. It's going to help us poop. It's going to do a lot of things. Whereas starch, it can be useful if we need glucose, we need some carbs, but sugar eventually is just going to spike your blood just so quickly, blood sugar very quickly. And the more of it we have, the more of it we crave, I always say. So if you had some sugar in the morning, good luck not eating it later. Right. So I always say, if I'm going to have something, I'm really good at just push it till the later. And then that's good. I had something and there's no more day left for me to snack. Right. It's a good one. But what about your fats? Number two, are your fats from omega-3, 6 trans fat? You hear about this. Omega-3s are amazing for you. I always look for more of them. You'll see them in fish and walnuts and that kind of stuff. Omega-6 is kind of overconsumed. That's every one of those oils we don't like. That's a lot of those processed foods we don't like. And we get way more omega-6 in our diet these days than we should. So that's why you see everyone blasting omega-3 gummies and omega-3 oils. And because we know we don't get enough of it. Unless you're eating fish pretty regularly and consuming lots of omegas from flaxseed and other things, it's hard to get enough of it. So fish oil is a great choice for that, or eating some more fish or omega-3 foods. Trans fats, if you don't know, don't go near them, right? They're not good for you. They're not digestible. They're going to wreak havoc on your cholesterol. There's all kinds of shows that will tell you straight up trans fat will kill you. It's the one to avoid. It's not recommended anymore. A lot of companies won't fry oils to the point where they're trans anymore, trans fats, just because it's so well known now. So look out for that. I remember, again, my bulking days. Oh yeah, look at these beef patties, cheap Costco. I didn't realize I was crushing a box or two until my buddy, who was also a lifter, he's like, there's trans fat in those. I was like, oh my God. So I had to stop eating them, right? So luckily it was only a month or so, but you just live and learn, right? And these are things that you can learn quickly. If you see trans fat in it, it's a shit food, straight up.
Polyunsaturated, saturated, what mono,
Yeah, polymoly,
what's
for sure. Most of the time, you're going to get that in foods that have dense variety of fats in them anyways. If you're eating your nuts or you're using your fats and oils, olive oil, a great one for polyunsaturated fats. And to give you, nice thing about olive oil is it has a nice balance of 3, 6, and 9 omegas. So it's a good one. Try and get a quality olive oil in a dark container, and extra virgin, maybe from the depths of Italy would be a good idea. Yeah, quality olive oil is a super duper food, and that's a good place to get some of those fats. Saturated fats, I didn't didn't mention that you asked fats. So saturated fats are actually really good for you. People don't realize that. So eating things like coconut oil and avocado oil are phenomenal. Eggs are phenomenal sources of saturated fat as well. So those are good ideas for fats. It's really, we talked about earlier, watch out for those processed oils. And sometimes, to be honest, we talked a little bit, Steve, there about peanuts and stuff like that. Sometimes too many of the same nut can be too many of the same things. You want a good balance. That's why I recommend get some pumpkin seeds, get some pistachios, get some cashews, eat some macadamia nuts, get a variety. Imagine they're all like a bit of a part of a multivitamin. You need to mix and match, right? Gluten issue. We talked about this quickly, right? Obviously, gluten can cause problems. If you guys don't, I might have mentioned it since I was, God, is it 13 years or 12, 13 years, gluten-free for like the longest time now. And if I eat it, it's normally by accident. And that's because I played with it and noticed, well, actually a lot of it was attitude and stomach. And I'm like, I don't like this at all. It doesn't do well with me. And then I did blood work and it confirmed it, which is nice. But if you're going to try and avoid gluten, these are some good points. You may not know that it says gluten straight up, or that it says wheat flour, or that it says barley, or rye, or spelt. All of those things will have gluten. And if you have someone with celiac and they, oh, cool, there's nothing wrong with this, it says rye, and they have a reaction, that's very possible, right? Or someone's stomach is upset because they didn't realize there's actually gluten in this. It's just given in a different form or said differently, right? Normally, if it's a good product, it should say at the bottom contains wheat, right? But sometimes, you get away with murder sometimes. So dairy issue, same idea. This is me now, even though I just finished talking about drinking pounds of homo milk. I typically try to avoid it unless it's a Haagen-Dazs. That's my 80-20 right there. We'll get into it. But dairy issue, avoid milk, modified milk, whey protein is milk, casein is casein protein, and lactose. It'll straight up tell us sometimes lactose is in this. They add lactose on cheesy chips and stuff like that. Gives it like a bit of a flavor, right? So you may not be aware, hey, this doesn't say milk, but this says lactose, and they're spraying a bit of milk on your chips, right? So something to be aware of. Units of measure here, we talked about it quickly, but if it says grams, ounces, milliliters, and liters, and all of a sudden the conversions are off, wait a minute, this is per gram, and this is per serving in liters. And you're like, well, so you've got to get your Google out again, get your phone. Nice thing is phone, you could even tell it, hey, Siri, how many grams per yada yada for yada yada? And it'll tell you, like, perfect. Now I know how much is in my food. And I'm glad we have that, because when I was back then, I'm like, I don't know the conversion of ounces to liters, right? So all I know is pounds to kilograms. I'm a lifter, right? So, but those are the ones that can kind of get mixed and matched, right? And number 6 is serving size, really often overlooked, where people are like, oh yeah, I just had, 1 can of that yada yada. Like, that can is 4 servings. You ate the whole thing? It's like, yeah, it's like, that's 1,200 calories. It's like, holy crap, right? And it's easy. Sometimes it's easy. These beans are amazing, right? I didn't know it was 250 calories. That's 1/4 of the can.
A bag of popcorn.
Yes. Yeah. Same idea, right? You look
No,
at it,
Patty, you shouldn't have said that, because
3.5
my version
servings in a
of your red
microwave
vines,
bag of popcorn.
Oh.
3.5 servings,
the
sir.
popcorn. Sure.
I love movie popcorn.
Cool.
I don't get butter on it typically, but I love movie popcorn, and I'll eat the crap out of it.
Nice.
Watching like John Wick or Maverick or something like that.
Popcorn,
But
movie popcorn. I get it, right? It's a good hack, because we were talking about earlier, like throwing.
don't go to the movie.
No, put what's it called? Put nutritional yeast on your popcorn. It gives it a nutty, cheesy flavor. It's actually quite tasty, and it is loaded with B vitamin, zinc, and potassium, and all kinds of stuff. And that's like a super awesome hack to be like, hey, I'll normally grass-fed butter. I'll throw it on there, and then I'll throw on some nutritional yeast. So now I've got myself a bit of a superfood and some carbs, right? But
I do nutritional yeast and Old Bay seasoning.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Good food, if you haven't heard. But
Well, and I think too, when you're talking about serving size, and I could be wrong on this, but I remember when like bagels got really popular, right? Einstein bagels all across the United States, and these kinds of things.
Yeah.
And they were basically sold as a healthy alternative to a donut, right? Because they're not covered in sugar, but they're typically 2 servings in a bagel, not 1.
Yep.
And you're smearing the hell out of it.
Everything on the sun.
Crap, right? And so I see people, same thing, you'll go get a vegetable plate and then they smother it with ranch dressing. Like, what are you doing? You took what God made and you crapped on it. and so in reality, something like a bagel being so high in carbs and all of that stuff, even without, the schmear and all that, but that's so high in carbs, it's 2 servings, it's all of that. you really got to be careful because everyone's walking around thinking, well, I skipped the donut, so I'm doing great. And you're probably doing more damage
Good
in,
stuff, man.
that kind of stuff. So you got to be really careful. So I'm just a man and I just eat a donut and
Yeah.
accept
The donut
my
for the donut.
reality.
Yeah, yeah. If people are replacing donuts on a daily for the bagel, then yeah, you're kind of missing the point. My favorite there with back in the day, I don't do it much anymore. Bagels are not popular. Like you said, there was a hit for bagels for a while. I
Yeah.
always told people, did you know a bagel is 4 pieces of toast? And they're like, oh, what? Like, yeah, a bagel is 4 pieces of bread, right? Stuffed into a one little loop, right? So that always gets people, oh crap, I wouldn't sit and eat 4 pieces covered with things, right? So that's a good one.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Some of the details to look out for, right? Other details here, nothing we need to read through really, but the RDI, our recommended daily intake, this is stuff I'm taking way more used to looking at and understanding. RDI, RDA, kind of interchangeable in a sense, our upper limit and lower limit. Words you don't really have to understand, but the numbers there are kind of important, I like. Where you're seeing calcium, zinc, vitamin D, vitamin A, and it's telling you our recommended daily allowance, and you're seeing now there's new ones. They're realizing, oh, wow, we thought we only needed this, but now we realize we need this. And that's actually, one of them's not on there, but a lot of them are really low for what we actually need. And nobody really looks at this. We barely look at food labels. Why would we look at those little percentage numbers with calciums and the vitamin Ds? But we want dense nutrients. That's why I was saying it's a good idea to have some nuts and stuff because you'll get some zinc and you'll get some iron and calcium. And you want that stuff. And the more we can get it in there, the more we can fill the allotted needed. Most people don't. I ask them all the time, do you get enough potassium per day? I'm like, how much potassium do I need? Right? Like, we don't know. We don't really know. I don't know that I need 4,700 milligrams of potassium every day. And that's like a huge, like, salad bowl of broccoli to fit that. And so there are nutritional needs we don't actually know. Or as Steve said there, the doctor's never going to tell you, hey, man, you need more zinc. Your testosterone's really low. You have no zinc left in your system. That's probably why your testosterone's so low. These are things nutritionists will tell you and naturopaths will tell you straight up. We'll do a zinc test. Wow, you're really low in zinc. Your testosterone's horrible. Let's see if that helps, right? A lot of times it will. And so I find these to be more important than going after any kind of medicine because typically you're going to see some kind of ailment come from if you don't have enough calcium, we know your bones will suffer, right? If you don't have enough vitamin D, you know your immune system will suffer. If you don't have enough zinc, we know your testosterone and your immune system will suffer. So these are all things that we can pay more attention to, get more in our diet with a vast collection of foods, and probably supplement as well. I'm big on supplementation because unfortunately the soils that we use to grow things aren't as nutrient dense as they used to be, and most of us aren't eating 7 to 10 cups of vegetables every day to meet those requirements. So supplementation like a multivitamin or getting your extra zinc or vitamin D, if you don't get enough sunlight, you want more vitamin D, good ideas. But I love this section of nutrition now a lot more because I'm looking at it a lot more. I have a lot of clients that are in their 60s and 70s, and I've been with them for 10 or 12 years. So I'm kind of helping them make sure we avoid arthritis. We don't want to get diabetes. We're looking to get these kinds of things. And a lot of times it's, informing them you're not getting enough of this. I don't see you eating enough cruciferous vegetables. You need these kinds of things to maintain good health, right? Any questions on this one? No? Good. This is fun. I know Steve will like this. All right. So on the left, when I was a kid, here you are, kids. This is what you should eat. You're going to have your 7 to 10 servings of breaded things, right? Make sure you fit those in. Then after that, you definitely want to get some fruits and vegetables. They were kind of smart with that. But then make sure you get your 1/3 per day of dairy intake and eat very little protein, right? Just a little bit of meat, small schmidgen. It's red, bad for you. Probably not done too much. Now we look at what they said recently, the last few years. This is the new plate they put on there. Well, look at the freaking difference. First of all, the thing that kicks me the hardest is there's not even a dairy section. Dairy's just gone, right? And so if you guys aren't aware, there's a little bit of political influence on what we eat, right? And so we make a lot of milk. We're going to sell a lot of milk. We make a lot of wheat and soy products. We're going to push that you should be consuming mostly those things. So there's definitely an influence there. But on the right here, we see a very small, healthy, like grains and, there's some dark seeded starches there. Those aren't that bad. And then at the top there, good sources of protein, little bits of meat and some lentils and some healthy things. And then a whole half. I agree with that. Yeah, load up. Like we said, 7 to 10 cups of vegetables. Load up on veggies and healthy, nutrient-dense foods to get some of those nutrients we need. That's a healthier looking version than what we saw there. So things are always changing. They used to tell you, live like this, exactly how you should do it. Okay, that might give you cancers or diabetes. Let's revisit this. Let's do this instead. And so it's important to try and follow what's happening now instead of, oh, I learned that when I was a kid, I don't need to change, right? Because things are always changing, always in flux. I'm not sure if you guys ever saw that, but this drove me nuts when I saw it. Oh, you guys are just not going to talk about how different it is, right? Like how we used to tell people, why don't you just eat carbs all day, right? All right, next up here. This is also really new and drove me nuts when I saw it. They sent out a recommendation of foods that we should eat. So you can see at the bottom, green being things we should have more, red things we should avoid. So frosted mini wheats we should eat a lot of, and ground beef is the devil, right? Does that make any sense? So I put that down here. Make sure to double down on your mini wheats and avoid butter like the plague said no one anywhere ever, right? For sure. And you can see there, I slapped it on there because I remind clients of this when they ask me about butter. Butter is good for you. Get yourself good quality grass-fed butter, even better for you. And Time Magazine there, how we got it wrong, right? But unfortunately, this list here, brand new list, is still living in the 80s, right? And it's telling us probably to just consume their damn products is what I'm seeing, right? And that's pretty sad because we know eggs are good for us and that beef is good for us, and they're in the don't touch it group at the bottom, right? So something to think about if you're just going through your basic nutrition from what they send us.
Well,
But
and
a lot of
again,
this
this
still
is very
pushed.
politically driven, and also, you can definitely see these two companies here with all of the lobbying and things like that that they
Yeah,
do as
they
well.
put the full name in there too. They don't call it like a grain-based cereal. They call it the Frosted Mini Wheats, right? And like, so it's literally advertisement for this list, right? And like honey bunches of oats 4 times a day. Like it just, yeah, yeah. But that's why I'm like, I'm going to put this time thing right next to it to show you how off things are with this list. And this list is new. I would understand if this was in the 80s or 90s, but let's get it together, people. You're not fooling me, but it is fooling some people who don't know any better and are only told what they're told and know what they know. So this can be eye-opening, sorry.
But if you look at this too, because I don't know if it's the same one, but I just heard a snippet of Joe Rogan talking about this of
Mhm.
how idiotic this is. I mean, this is complete horse shit, this
Yeah.
thing. Like,
Mhm.
I defy someone to sit here and tell me that this is real. Like, you can't do it. This is utter nonsense.
Yeah,
And the thing is,
yeah,
but when you are talking about countries that will wait in line to eat dog food at McAss every day, and they do it multiple times a week, it's easy to show them this, and they don't even blink twice because
no idea.
they don't care. They don't, you don't know how to read any of that. You don't care.
Yep.
And you're eating stuff that's not food. When, I mean, even a little bit of cheese here and there, obviously you shouldn't cut a hunk of cheese, right, and eat it like an apple, but
I
a
am.
little bit of, non-lactose cheese or whatever on a burrito
Yep.
or a something,
Yep.
it's fine when they're saying that it should be totally avoided.
Yeah, it has more nutrients in it than all the things above. I would say a quality cheese. Like if you got a quality aged brie, like there's massive B vitamins and good nutrients in it. There's microbial culture, good for your gut. But if
Yeah.
you have Kraft slices, that's not really cheese anymore. It's plastic flavored cheese, right? And so you can get quality cheese. I recommend, especially if you do well with dairy, eat cheese. It's hard to get that many B vitamins, so it's a good food. But yeah, those bottom 3 are healthier than the ones all above it, which is crazy, right? So this is the stuff we're being told. I figured show you guys in case people are asking, oh, if I get my mini wheats every day, not a good idea, right? Another weird one. So we're kind of comparing things here. On the left, you'd be like, yeah, don't worry. You have yourself 2 drinks a night. Or if you're a man, you have at least 3 drinks a night. Men can drink a little more, right? That was kind of the consensus. 10 drinks a week for women, maybe 15 drinks a week for men. And now we're seeing on the side, they'll tell you, well, 0 drinks is no risk. A couple drinks is a low risk. 3 to 6 is a moderate risk, and 7 or more is an increasingly higher risk. So we're about half of what they said you can top off at, and we're at an increasingly higher risk. So again, we're seeing what a change at what we used to recommend for people. So when this came out, I wasn't overly surprised. Obviously, it needs to change a little bit. That people maybe need to be a little more aware. But I wasn't thinking anyone's like, yeah, it's a health product. I go every time to LCBO for my health juice, right? And the people weren't thinking that at all. But it didn't help thinking, cool. I at least 15 or 20 or 30 drinks a week. I'm not really too bad. But now you look at this, you're like, oh, I'm really not doing so well. So it gives you a little bit more real and increasingly high risk. It's your decision. Take the risk, right? But on the side,
And
for sure.
This political landscape that we were working in during the pandemic, we never had a loss of fast food products and alcohol.
The things that kill us the most were allowed to be open and were essential products. Pretty funny, right? But yeah, another one there too. Not too much of a downer alcohol. Everyone likes to have a whatnot. But I mentioned, dark red wine, good nutrients, something like that is going to give you more than the normal. My buddy likes to do vodka water lime if he goes out or whatever. So he gets some water, gets a little, or like a dark cranberry with vodka. So something you can like add some nutrients to. Definitely not the worst thing all the time. But I would say consistently, it's really hard because if you're drinking consistently, then you never really let the liver do its thing and get it out. Right. So definitely a good point there. So, all right. So let's move along. Good stuff. And all right, so this was extra from what I put up earlier. And this is something I do with people. This is the replacements. This is what I do with actual clients. And so the whole idea of the replacements is to find healthier options to your tolerance. Experiment until you can strike gold, I say. Practice mental toughness, which we all do when we come on this chat.
Hey, that's violence. That's violence. You need to stop that.
And then using the 80-20 rule, we talked about that a little bit. Nobody wants to live like an athlete because they're not competing in the Olympics. So 70-30, 80-20, find your ratio, but try to be a higher ratio of healthier things versus small because we want to dabble in those things that maybe make us feel good. But you can start to list out, wait a minute, that was senseless sugar. I actually want to eat this. I'll save that for Friday and I won't eat this. That's a great idea. And I talk about this very picture at the bottom to so many clients because we are children. We are still just big babies. Adults are big babies. I treat them like big babies. Before, when they're screaming, I want that candy, they're screaming, I want that candy. But if they love bananas and you get a banana in their hand, look at that face, right? He's happy. He's satisfied. Adults are no different. So find a healthier option, find a ton of healthier options until you find one that sticks or a couple that stick and use those every time for a while. And then maybe you won't even want it anymore, or maybe now you'll be having that replacement instead. But it's still better than the latter, right? And it's something I really get started with people because we don't want to feel deprived. We don't want to restrict our diet. We don't want to feel like I hate that I'm not eating things. So you can get the banana and smile, right? Instead of sit there frustrated and angry, and instead you're moving in the right direction. Nutrient dense food. Maybe it's something that's no longer high sugar, and instead I just had some water or I had a coffee. Wow, that fixed my problem, my craving. Sometimes there are just better solutions, and that's why I like handing out the replacements with clients. They just start to write down ideas and different scenarios for foods. But yeah, we are big babies.
I got a quick question on your 80-20.
Yeah.
So do you think that it is better to look at it like 80-20 every day, 80-20 through the week? Meaning, do you think if I had a small piece of chocolate every night versus being good all week and having a piece of cake or a dessert, like obviously you would have to be comparing items that are, same calorie, sugar and all that kind of thing. But yep. Do you think the timing of it is more important, that 20% occurs like maybe one day a week versus a little bit every day, or what's your thought on that?
I like you. Yeah, you said it there. The first point, finding healthier options to tolerance. So everybody's a little bit different. What do you want? A little chocolate every day? Or are you cool with having a bunch of ice cream and some popcorn and some pop on a Friday and that's it? Like, what is your tolerance? What works best for you? So when I'm working with clients, I don't like to give hard, fast rules, because if that doesn't work for them, then they might not want to go along with it. So instead, if you're like, hey man, I like my little bit of Lindt dark chocolate every evening, that keeps me from binging on piles of shit all the time, then that's a good strategy.
Right. That's right? So more kind of a mental emotional response than
huge.
Truly.
And like that's right under the 80-20 there. I put, can you emotionally handle this switch?
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Because if people can't, then why would they stick with it, right? It triggers them, right? So if they're like, cool, banana's good, yeah, banana, and then after a week or a few days, they're like, you know what, I want some, sure, do it, but then go back to the replacement, create the new habit of the replacement, and then the
Yeah.
treat that used to be a treat will now again wants to be a treat. Right. And that's kind of how I like to do it if I'm going to switch things out. I like making homemade like chia seed pudding or something, and something that I can dive
Yeah,
into,
right,
even
right.
that have some chocolate, right? And then of course I'm going to have, like I mentioned there, like I'll go Haagen-Dazs. If you buy chocolate Haagen-Dazs, just chocolate, cream, butter, sugar, cocoa, eggs, 5 ingredients, right?
Nice.
So, and whereas you go Ben and Jerry's chocolate, can't pronounce most of them, you'll get to about 38 or 28 ingredients, and the difference is huge. Modified foods, all that kind of stuff. So that for me is just a better choice if I'm going to eat ice cream. So same idea. I'm satiated from it. It's Haagen-Dazs, but it's also better than Ben and Jerry's. So
Yeah,
go
good
ahead and
point.
cheat, but make a better cheat, right?
Yeah.
Cheat smart, right? If you're going to cheat something that's good for you and at least gives back a little bit instead of stripping your body. And if you're going to do those, plan those and just make sure they're not too often, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
Awesome.
Have fun and learn more about the vast world of food and cooking. That's definitely the journey. Right now that you're looking at nutritional labels, you're trying to understand food. What should I get? What, you're counting calories maybe, or you're looking at more sugar versus fats. Then make sure to have fun. Try to learn, and next time you look at it, you'll see something else, and you're like, I already had, maybe I'm more 70-30, and that's fine, right? If you were completely opposite 20-80, now you're 50-50, you still progress, right? You're making that switch. So, but yeah, that's a little bit of bonus there. So the replacements. But yeah, that's a lot of politics between foods there, and some of the key takeaways. So read your facts and your ingredients. Very important. Understand what quality ingredients are versus calories, right? So it's great that it's only 10 grams of sugar, but that sugar came from modified cornstarch. That's not great, right? So make that decision, right? And say, oh, this one's 10 grams of cane sugar. Cane sugar is from a plant. That's more natural. I like that, right? Understand serving sizes and portions. We said that already, but that's honestly one of the biggest things. People will tell me, oh, I only had some cashews. Like, did you count how many cashews? Like, no, then you probably had 4 handfuls and you don't even realize that you ate a pizza, right? So consume more real food, right? That's a great, just overall, if it doesn't have a label like Patty said though, or the less stuff in it, the better, right? Try to consume more real food. Compare it with other products. This is now a game, right? I didn't know this one's crap. I had this problem with coconut milk for the longest time. They kept putting these fillers in it, and then I finally found one, and that's the only one I'll buy now, right? Because I just like, this one doesn't have that extra additive. Oh, this is the one I'm buying. And Di's like, you have to go to Whole Foods. I'm like, I need that coconut milk, right? And then raise awareness, or compare other foods, raise awareness to sneaky ingredients. That's honestly what I was hoping a lot of this will help with people. You look at something, now there's flour in it, now there's something that's not good for you, now it's high in fat, so it's high in calories. Just raising awareness to what you're eating, right? Dr. Rakowski did his cortisol stress reset a few weeks ago. Awesome. Melatonin every hour for 7 to 10 days. I felt like I had allergies where I was just kind of really drowsy, but it did great for my stress. I had better sleep. I'm now waking up with a little bit more zing. I can't fall asleep again when I wake up. I got energy, right? So it's an interesting problem to have. I want to nap a little more. I'm like, time to get up, right? But he's great. And one of the things he likes to say is, if God made it, it's okay. If man made it, stay away. And those are a good thing to think about, right? Like, okay, this is natural. This is pork from a pig. This is broccoli from a field. This is, starch from a plant, as opposed to, there's 78 ingredients and none of them are made by nature, right? Something to think about. But yeah, we kind of ran through all of them anyways. But any other questions based on what we talked about here, guys? Yeah, Steve.
I just got to, we didn't really talk about it. Maybe talked about it last time that I missed, but like I don't drink coffee. I can't stand the smell of coffee. I'm
Sure.
never going to. But like caffeine, right?
Sure.
So caffeine, like everything else in America, is abused, and I'm a user.
Sure.
But I do go through times when I kind of pull off, and so my daughter and I are going to go no caffeine again in July.
Nice.
But I know some people will use it kind more methodically or more scientifically, almost like you just mentioned with your melatonin, versus drinking 3 rock stars a day, right? 3 Monster energy drinks, something that has a lot of other crap in it. And that's great that there's B12 in it or whatever, but not necessarily the best way to get that also, you know, there can be heart things, and
Yeah,
we don't know a lot
sure.
about it, right? There's no long-term study type thing, but as far as, let's say, half a caffeine pill that you could buy at Walmart, for example, right? Mixed with water on, you know, maybe at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe that's too late, maybe 11 o'clock or something like that, where you're not necessarily getting all that extra crap and baggage that shouldn't be there,
Sure.
versus completely, because a lot of it comes down to bad sleep, and maybe there's injury, there's stress, there's anxiety. So there's a lot of things at play. And so I don't necessarily like using caffeine as a crutch when there's other things at play that I should probably be addressing.
Sure.
But at the same time, one of my problems, you know, with like a rock star is, for me, and maybe I've convinced myself, but it does help with anxiety. It does help in high stress situations. It does take the edge off if I am like falling asleep yesterday, but I had to go pick up my wife at the airport and it's 2 hours away. It will take the edge off, and I'm not drowsy driving, going to crash my car kind of thing. But at the same time, I don't want to be doing that every day
Mhm.
when, you know what I mean? But
So
like
caffeine,
for
basically. Yeah,
for
yeah.
caffeine, but so like for
Caffeine.
you, and
Sure.
especially being athletic, being weightlifting, you
Sure.
know, those kinds of things, what is your take, or what is your
Love it, man.
caffeine
Yeah.
use?
Great. Caffeine. Absolutely. Well, you know, people do abuse it. You're so right. And the number one source of caffeine is, of course, coffee. I think there's several billion people who, no, there's several billion cups of coffee consumed every single day. So people are consuming a lot of caffeine from coffee. And not necessarily a bad thing. Coffee, I know you don't like it, but coffee is one of the healthiest things you consume. It's the number one antioxidant people consume. It's great for your liver. And if you get good quality coffee, most of it's sprayed with pesticides, then it's good for you. And the reason I like coffee for caffeine is because it's with all it's paired with its polyphenols and other nutrients that it's meant to be with. So if you were to try and get caffeine in like a stimulant drink, I love some of them now
Yeah.
will say caffeine from green beans, right? So they'll actually tell you it's coming from a source. So it's coming with all the things that caffeine should come with. But when we have those straight pills, that is just basically a shot to our system, and it doesn't have that other nice nutrients that can come with the foods that naturally have occurring caffeine. So I like
Okay.
having it as a natural sort if you can. But on top of that, with weightlifting, yeah, absolutely. I like to have a coffee before I work out. And I find that for people, it depends on your sensitivity. Like I know my wife there, if it's anything past 4 p.m., do not hand her caffeinated anything, right? It'll be
Yeah.
11 p.m. She just can't shut her down, right? So you need to find your
Yeah.
window. How sensitive are you to coffee? You'll be more sensitive the more you cut out caffeine. You could, just like a drug, you can build a tolerance, right?
Yeah.
And I would say if you're working out, the number one rule I learned from strength coach Charles Poliquin: do not consume caffeine right after you train or after working out. Don't get used to eating or having caffeine after you work out, because your body's trying to calm down. We talked a little bit about cortisol. It's trying to
Got
slow
it.
down
Right.
that cortisol after your workout. You're trying to recover from your workout, not jack yourself back up again, right? And so that's really hard on your system. It'll be hard on your testosterone, be hard on your recovery. So caffeine pre-workout, good. Gets you a lift, gives you energy. You have a better lift. You want to bring that down when you're done, get back to zen or back to normal.
Got it. Okay.
But people who stim all day long are going to have a hard time falling asleep sometimes because they'll be too bagged or always bagged. So yeah, you
Yeah.
do want to find a bit of a balance. You don't want to be consuming over, 1,000 milligrams. I would say 50 to 200 a day if you're counting, for sure. I have a couple
Okay.
coffees each day. I buy a really good organic mixed with reishi mushroom coffees that again, like I told you, everything I eat I try to get as much in it as possible. My
Right.
coffee no different. And I only have it late, like today. I knew I was going to be talking, so I had it around 6. It'll wear off 9-ish for me, and I do take time off as well. It's a good idea. Hey, how does my body react without caffeine, right? And if you find you're living on it, it's definitely a good idea to try and wean back. You can try my
Yeah.
mom's approach, was just drink tea. You go from coffee or whatever it is, it's high. Tea's very low in caffeine, but it's very good for you on top of that. So you could have a little bit of tea throughout the day, still have a bit of a buzz, but not be ramping that caffeine through the roof.
Right. Right. And I know that so I had a goal for mountain biking to climb 35,000 feet by June 30th, and I just hit that goal Friday a couple days ago. And
Nice, man.
so I
Yeah,
in
good
order
job.
to do that, thank you. I was doing some rides where I was going 2,500 feet, riding, climbing for 2.5 to 3 hours. Big rides, big elevation, all of that. And I started taking like pre-workout, drinking that on the drive to go start the ride. I
Okay.
would drink pickle juice.
Yep.
And a small vial of dill pickle juice.
Yep.
I drink most of it just to preempt so cramps didn't start. I don't typically get those,
Mhm.
but it's enough of a strain and a climb and a 2.5 to 3 hour
Well, that's a good
workout,
point there. Is caffeine will
know?
dehydrate you. I think we all kind of know that. You drink a bunch of
Right.
coffee, you're going to go pee. Same idea. So you want to make sure you're still hydrating.
Yeah.
With caffeine for
And
sure.
so I've got 100 ounces of water and all of that, but I have these last 3 rides of doing that have been about 3 hour rides. I felt pretty dang good. I did back-to-back rides last week, going over 3,000 feet on Friday and then Saturday.
Nice.
And, I felt good, no cramps, no, any of that kind of thing. And I really feel like the pre-workout, helped. And I don't typically do a pre-workout before a mountain bike ride.
Yep.
I might if I'm
It's in the
consistently at a gym.
scientific literature. Caffeine is a performance enhancer, right? So you will
Yeah.
get better results with caffeine. That's just been shown. Athletes use it, right? So using it smart, kind of what you're talking about there.
Awesome.
Don't abuse it. Yeah, good stuff, buddy. Good
Cool.
stuff.
Thanks,
Yeah,
man.
good goals. I love that too. Awesome. So lots of questions there. We kind of nailed a lot. Anything else, Patty, Chris? You guys are good.
I thought it was a great conversation
Yeah.
about the labels and actually assessing your strategy about food by reading what the ingredients truly are and how they'll interact with your body. Because you're right, it's no longer just what you see is what you get, is the chemicals inside
Yep.
that you really have to be aware of. And since I've been on that medication that's really lowered my appetite, I can actually take the time to think through these strategies.
Good. Yeah, good time to start
And
looking at things.
also, I don't find myself grabbing those emotionally satisfying foods as much. I can now make a decision to grab them or
drug.
not to.
It's a drug. If you didn't know already, guys, sugar and those food, like it can be so addicting. How do you think someone gets 800 pounds? Right?
Yeah.
Like it's a drug, right? So the more we can be aware of it and play with it to make sure that we're not feeding an addiction, the smarter. And I like Chris there, making more informed decisions. Maybe now you can pick something up that normally you would just grab and eat, and you don't feel that temptation anymore, and you can read something and learn something, right? I learned something on the weekend there. I said, Diana, you know what? Yeah, we'll get some cheaper snacks tonight. I'll just get some snacks this Saturday. I'm going to buy some cheap snacks. I go to the dollar store. Oh my God. So like looking at what you shouldn't eat in foods, like some of the top foods, some of the top preservatives. I know a lot of these things, benzoates and titanium dioxides and stuff I mentioned before. Every single food in there was almost the worst food you could eat. The dollar store is loaded with all the stuff people probably shouldn't eat, so they send it to the dollar store. And
Right,
that's
'cause
really
it's
what I know. I was
cheap,
like,
right?
I couldn't believe it. The chips, the candies, they're like, you can find your good things. We do know, Diane and I will find, oh, they have good sea salted cashews. We'll find a few gold gems in there. But if you're not reading food labels, and you eat at the dollar store all the time, that could kill you, right?
But remember what you said, that making those sugary chemical foods is more inexpensive. It is cheaper.
Yeah,
So
dollar
that's a
store.
place where it
There
would
you
be
go.
sold at a dollar store. You
Good.
would not
Yeah,
see
good choice.
organic at a dollar store traditionally.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true, right? That's what you see, what you get. I mean, I got one of those water sprayers for the flowers, just put water in and squirt. It broke instantly. I was like, dollar store, like what you see is what you
Right?
get, right? So I was like, you know what, the candy breaks just, and so do their equipment. So yeah, you get what you want from dollar store. But yeah, good point. Awesome. Yeah, and great conversation tonight, guys. I'm glad we got this one through. Ran through it a little bit. I've been meaning to do this with clients, and actually, it was funny when we did the cortisol chat. I had to cut it up, and I'm supposed to post it and everything. And I saw that I mentioned something, and people talked food labels. It's like, I could talk about food labels. And people are like, yeah. So I'm like, you know what? That flagged it for me to do this, and I'm glad you guys got something out of it. I'll post it, make sure Charmaine can see it as well too. But
Awesome.
yeah, hopefully next time you flip that thing, whatever it is, over and just give it a read. Maybe you care, maybe you don't, but maybe you've created some awareness around what it's for and why and what you want to do with your body and what you want to eat. And so, yeah, food labels, guys. Good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think this whole thing about food that you're talking about here at the end about pesticides
Sure.
in
Yeah, we didn't get into that.
coffee.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I think about that because we're talking about labels or healthy foods that don't have labels on them because they're whole foods
Mhm.
and the pesticides in that. So that is
Yeah.
definitely
That's not
a
there
good-
yet. We don't see on the nutritional label. It does
Yeah.
not say the amount of fungicide in your food is. They just
Right.
won't. They just
Right.
straight up won't tell you that, right? What is if you know
Right.
that certain foods have it. So, for instance, normally non-organic wheat flour is going to be sprayed with glyphosate, which is a fungicide herbicide, and not good for you. But it's not going to say that. So then it's up to you to understand that you need organic wheat flour, as long as you do well with wheat flour, to avoid that pesticide. So it's kind of tricky. We're still not there where it's a perfect system. And I love being able to share with you guys this, that you guys can share with other people, and we can start just sending the message of like, hey, did you know you shouldn't be freaking eating that? That's trans-saturated fats or something, right? And we can start just pushing the right message for food.
So I just love how what's on the label and what's not on the label and how things have changed over the years. So I thank you for bringing this tonight. It was really helpful for me. Still taking notes over here.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you guys
Same.
enjoyed it, and it seemed like you had some questions and stuff. Everybody eats, so that's why it's an easy one to chat about with people, right? We're all going to consume stuff. None of us are monks eating nothing but goji berries, so it's it's a good conversation to have. And next time you're in the store, hopefully it makes a bit of a change, or maybe some kind of influence. So thanks, you guys. Thank you so much.